When you're talking about a leader making decisions, and even like having been one of those leaders on the battlefield, like you're doing calculus in your head, right? You're going through like step by step, like, all right, every movement, every decision, you're there's a decision point and different actions are happening. But to accelerate some of those decisions and have verifications of some of those decisions. So knowing that, hey, that is true or that is the thing. Now I know I can take action versus like, I'm not really sure, but I think I can take action.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening in to the first ever episode of Defense Disrupted. My name is Ian Kalin, and I am speaking with Chané Jackson, a principal with TurbineOne. Chané served in the U.S. military for over 20 years, including a leadership role as the Chief Data Scientist for Special Operations Command. Chané, thank you for joining me today.
No, thank you, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Before we launch into this inaugural conversation and this crazy idea of launching a podcast, I'll share a brief disclaimer that the stories and opinions shared here are of us as individuals, not the company we work for, and definitely not the U.S. military or the U.S. government. Nothing classified or secret or confidential will be shared, but we're going to be talking about national security. So listeners from outside the community should be advised that some difficult topics may come up. But let's start simple. Chané, can you please introduce yourself?
Nice to meet everyone. My name is Chané Jackson. Obviously principal TurbineOne. I did a 20-year stint in the military. Had a lot of fun throughout my time in the military. I was in the infantry. I went to Regiment. Went to Special Forces. Then I became a data scientist, and I did that for like the last 10 years. Had some good trips, met some good friends, and you really the folks that I served with are the reason why I'm still standing here today. To be honest with you, because I'm a goofball, and I'm telling you, a little out of control at times, and they kept me alive. So I got to say thank you for all those gentlemen I served with and ladies in uniform, and to the cadets I was able to teach when I was at West Point as an instructor. So those folks also helped develop me as well. But no, I love judo. I love playing the saxophone with my daughter. She's a lot better than I am. No disclaimer here. I mean, she's 20 times better. And I tell you one thing, I love karaoke. So,
well, that's a different podcast, Chané. I'm sorry to let you down there. Although for those maybe watching in versus listening, you may see some music in my background, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about defense and about you, Chané. So let's go back to almost the beginning. What was your first job in the U.S. military?
I usually take it way back.
Okay.
Because I actually joined in 1999, and I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to go to the preparatory school, United States Military Academy Preparatory School. And I will tell folks, really, my first job was to my classmates. We all went through a struggle when we went to the academy. So preparatory school is really for folks who really aren't. We're not. It's cadets who have all the characteristics, but they may be missing a little bit, or maybe add a little bit more to them. So me, I was really strong in math. My English was extremely weak, but I was good with physical, military, all that kind of stuff. So I need to kind of work that to get into the academy. So when I was at the academy, my real first job was tutoring my classmates where I had the strength, and then receiving from those who had the strength in writing and English. So it was like a multifaceted approach. So, I mean, I really think that's really my first job in the military. I know everyone wants to talk about the infantry and all the cool stuff, but I mean, that's before I even got to the infantry. And I think that's really what allowed me to be a leader later in the service, right? Because I learned what does selfless service really mean? Because I wanted to do well at school. I wanted to graduate to the other end, but I was not going to have that. That wasn't going to happen if I didn't learn how to serve my community and help those who struggle with math, and then receive from those who knew the English, right? So I think that was really my first job. And it was really the first time that I really was humbled and got to understand what does it mean to really be a leader. And you didn't have to wear the rank or, it was all about how can you help everyone around you and how can you pull the organization up?
Brilliant. For those that are able to watch this versus listen in, you're probably already compelled by the energy and just the style of Chané's engaging leadership. So we're also going to take advantage of that a little bit now. Chané, by chance, I put a pop quiz on you just a few minutes before we hit record here. Do you have any pictures of yourself from way back then? Something that you'd be able to share here of what you were like back in the cadet days?
Back in the cadet days? Yeah, I got a little picture here.
Yeah, and while you do that, this really was a pop quiz. This was like just a few seconds before we hit record. I was like, you know what would be really fun if you had a chance to share any of these specific details. And for those that are only listening in, I'll provide the little voiceover for what we're looking at.
You want the Dead Days photo, right?
Well, what you were talking about those early days. Do you have any evidence of
No,
what it looked like back then?
Yeah, so there's a story that goes with this one.
Okay, what's this?
Story to go. This is the Air Force Academy Exchange, and you see like all of us are lined up there. We had a chance to go to Air Force Academy for 6 months, and I always tell everyone, I didn't get a chance to go because I was great or because I was better than everybody or I was smart or super awesome. I got a chance to go because those folks to your left, my left and right, and the folks in the stands there actually helped me get there. And I think a lot of times I think about really getting that opportunity to go see what it looked like, because I actually wanted to become a pilot. And that didn't happen. I was like, my whole life, I grew up. I was like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a pilot. I'm going to go out there into space and I'm going to do all these awesome things and fly F-18s and F-15s or whatever the heck it was, or actually it was F-15s at the time. And none of that happened. I went to the Air Force Academy, and I was lucky. I was fortunate. Actually, another cadet had turned it down because he wanted to go take a leadership position. So they came to me and they said, "Hey, you want to go over?" And I was like, "Sure."
And for those that can't see it, it's basically we have folks standing at attention, and it looks like a parade ground at a flag salute. Looks like on a football field with a looks to be a little bit younger. Although I gotta say, I think you got more muscle now than you did back then. I don't know how that works. Somehow you're aging like backwards, Chané. You actually are stronger than you at our age and our vintage. It's funny how that works.
This picture, Ian, is a great picture. It's a picture where they do what they call a prisoner exchange, where the cadets from West Point will go to the other side. They'll sit in the stands with the Air Force Academy, and like the Air Force is playing Army. So, I'm sitting in the stands with Air Force and they're like beating me up over there, right? And then, the game's happening. And then at halftime, we switch sides and their exchange cadets go back to their side and we go back to our side and we hug our classmates and everything. And obviously the game's going and it's just a good game and everyone's just having fun. No harm, no foul. No one's actually getting hurt or physically getting hurt.
Yeah.
We're just having a good time. So that's a picture again, like of me next to the classmates and several of those folks on that panel are legends. They became Marshall Scholars, Rhodes Scholars, and great individuals. And it was great to kind of have served with them at that point too. And that junction later on, actually, the guy to the far right, his name is Marty Peters. He actually, his platoon relieved and saved us out on the objective in combat. So Marty's on the far right.
Wow. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's go forward. Okay. So you learned obviously from these early days. I'm motivated by your example of in the earliest moment, your first job was to help where you can, but also to be helped. There's a teamwork aspect of what you learned probably as a teenager, right? Like pretty early on in life, that ultimately it sounds like carried through to other aspects of your military service. Let's go forward a little bit. Okay, so you get this great opportunity. You start to stand out in your early days. You get these special opportunities that you leverage, you take advantage of. And then you go into active duty service. It sounds like you had a few different careers, right? You didn't go straight into data science on day one. It sounds like you did other things. Are there any other examples or stories that you can share from some of those early years of service?
Hey, we talked earlier. Let's talk about Ranger School.
Okay. What happened at Ranger School?
It's what they call repeat the mountain phase.
Okay.
So Ranger School is a school of 61 days, technically 61 days, where you start off kind of at what they call Fort Benning, Georgia, kind of learning the basics on infantry and maneuver and patrols and walking through the woods and formation, all that kind of stuff. And then you go to the next phase, which is, hey, now we're going to go into the mountains where you're in Dahlonega, Georgia. You're up and down the mountains. You're kind of dancing around the Appalachian Trail, like it's a little chilly. It's a little chilly. And then you go to the Florida phase, where it's like you're in the swamp. Now you're out there in the swamp. You're in the water, waist high, chest high. It doesn't make a difference. They're just trying to get you to learn how to feel what does it feel like to be actually in like more of a jungle, like swampy environment. So I had the fortunate opportunity then to really get close to my peers because I went through patrolling in mountains, didn't pass my first patrol. And then I got to my second patrol and I was actually the second in command on that second patrol. And I had a good friend of mine, we were doing this thing together, and we just kind of messed it up tactically. One of the things was we were supposed to assault an objective, and I told him, I said, "Hey, do not go up the hill, go down the hill, because if you go up the hill, you accidentally shoot your support by fire, and that's where I'll be." And he went up the hill. So the ranger school instructor told me, in mountain phase, you usually get like these blueberry pancakes every day in the morning, and that's kind of how you start off the day until you go to the field, and they just, everyone just starves, or you just trying to figure it out, right? That day when I finished that patrol, he told me, I hope you like blueberry pancakes, is what he told me. And since that day, I've never eaten a blueberry. Well, why does this matter? Because like later, I did recycle mountains. I was actually in mountain phase for 3 months. And like I said, the school's 61 days, tack on an extra 3 months on that. So it was 5 months for me in that school. But what it did help me out with is my first deployment was actually to Afghanistan, in which case I was in the mountains. And I was really comfortable in the mountains. And, I thank God for that, because honestly, I was really trying to rush through that phase. I wanted to get out of there as soon as I could. It was miserable, but I had to go through it again, and like repeat it. And I had to wait for the next class to kind of catch up. And then I did the whole thing. And while we're waiting, we were patrolling and doing all we're just like walking around in the mountains the whole time. And they just kept us proficient in our skills. And then when that next class showed up, I was a lot stronger. But when I got to my actual first unit, and I got a chance to serve with a guy named Joe Geraci. We called him Captain America. He was my commander. He's an amazing individual. And Tony LeBron Nathan, two great individuals. I really got a chance to really get into the mountains, and actually I was comfortable. I was comfortable with my equipment, comfortable walking up and down the cliffs and chasing after the bad guys when we needed to. And I think that really helped me out a lot. So I thank God for that. And I think the team that kind of brought me through that, some of the great individuals like Ricardo Henry out there, he recycled with me, and he kept me pushing through that with his motivational songs and singing in church and everything when we're going through mountain phase. And if not for some of those guys like Brandon Grooms and Ricardo Henry and Brian Reynolds, like I don't think I would have made it.
Do you have any pictures from back then for those that are able to see as well? Anything, any other examples were shared, or maybe not appropriate to share?
No, I have pictures, but they're like hard pictures. Like we didn't have like phones back then.
Oh, I thought I saw at one point something of you in the Afghanistan days, but maybe that's
no. Oh yeah, I can't do them. That's when I was special forces. But
that came later. Okay, you spent a few times out of that part of the.
That was much later.
Okay, all right. Well, let's jump ahead then. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's keep the story as it's going. You've shared a lot so far. Thank you for doing so here about some of the great people that you've worked with and learned from. I think the reason we're still fighting in this community for the world to be a better place is that there's still a lot of things missing out there at the front lines. Your career obviously went into a level of technical leadership, into data, into AI. How did that change start from being more the rifle carrier than the AI deployer? When did you start to see that transition in your own career?
My friends, especially the guys I was SF with, Dave Coulomb, and they'll joke around and say stuff like, Chané, when are you going to get a badge with a calculator on it? I was going to get a calculator badge, right?
Like a Boy Scout days or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I was an undergrad math major with mechanical engineering as my track. So when I was at the academy, so I was always in the math. I loved it. That's kind of my safe place, right? And so when it came time, I had my first daughter. I love being special forces. Do not get it twisted. I love the environment. I love the community. My first battalion commander, Colonel Tal Sullivan, was a great individual, great American. Tommy Meyer was my team sergeant. I tell you, those guys were above and beyond. And I will tell you, it was a hard decision to make. I had to look and kind of shift and say, hey, I want to spend more time with the family. I've been away from my daughter quite a bit, and she was just born. So I was like, hey, maybe I can shift into a different field, something different. Now, I will tell you, it wasn't data scientist. That wasn't what I was hoping to do. I was looking to be like kind of a math guy. So they said, hey, operations research systems analysis is kind of the field that we have our mathy people. Well, so my wife and I were both undergrad in math.
Yeah.
Right? So we both were like, hey, let's shift into something that we can kind of, we're comfortable with, but, not going to have, the constant deployments kind of thing. So we elected to go back to the academy and teach, but they sent us to grad school first. And going to grad school, and this is where kind of the data science piece comes in. We went to University of Texas in Austin, and in Austin they said, "Hey, whoa, 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 whoa! If you're gonna be a mathematician and work in the force, you got to know how to code. You got to understand, you got to understand algorithms, network science, all these different things." And I was just like, "Holy smokes!" And so then they put me hands on keyboard for 2 years, and I got really comfortable understanding machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, and that's kind of what we did anyway, right? So didn't call myself a data scientist by any means. I was more like a mathematician. So when I got to West Point, obviously I helped other professors with their papers. Wound up publishing a paper with a guy named Tony Johnson, Colonel Tony Johnson. He's retired now. Great individual again. And then so after doing that, when I went back into the community, I had a ability to code and understand like programming and how it integrates within the problem. Then like all of a sudden, obviously this data science field was kind of growing. And so a guy named General Ferrari was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just kind of hanging out." He's like, "No, I'm just standing up the Army AI task force." And that's kind of where it catapulted from there, where he was just like, "Hey, just kind of focus on building these networks and these things, these special things you've been doing over at West Point anyway, and do it for the Army." And I said, "Okay."
Okay, so this general comes in and says AI task force for the Army. There had to be a requirement or some sort of pressing challenge to the extent you can share it. People don't just do task forces for the fun of it. It's not, it's an allocation of resources, so it's a level of investment. Why do you think that was the tool that was needed at the time? Was it a solution looking for a problem, or there were some problems that you thought that they were trying to wrangle and understand?
No, I mean, no. There were problems in terms of like satellite imagery,
Okay.
being able to do different detections. So one of my mentors, Colonel Kelly Ryan, like she actually was the originator of the idea of the Army AI Task Force. Like she started the idea, and she was the one that actually briefed General Ferrari on this idea. I mean, he was just pulling me in, but Kelly worked with industry, and she had a chance to go out in industry and kind of see what industry was doing with satellite capability. And she was like, "Hey, the military needs this. We need folks that can do this." And so because of Kelly, I do think like she understood what some of those requirements were, especially in the intelligence community, some of the requirements out there in the active force. But we worked together to kind of build that organization and kind of understand it. So I was lucky enough that after being there for a year, I got the fortunate option to deploy back with the special mission units and actually be a data science team leader at the edge. So I think, the requirement was definitely there when I showed up. Because they were overwhelming later. It was,
But it's what's fun about this is that it feels like, and forgive me if I'm saying the full name wrong, but Kelly realized that there was a need and a leader that saw an opportunity, but still had to go outside of defense to see what industry was doing, to then bring some of those skill sets inside. That's an in and out externality that I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper on. So, how come the Army couldn't just figure this out themselves, know it themselves, see it themselves? Why did folks like Kelly have to go outside the industry to learn that, lo and behold, there were some capabilities out in the world that apparently the Army wasn't fully leveraging? Like, does that seem as a surprise to you that she had to go outside rather than just knowing it from within?
so I don't know if it's that she had to go outside. I do know that organizations do know that they have the requirements. They do know what they know what's out there and what they see industry doing. I think, when you kind of put the puzzle pieces together is where you take, okay, now this is the domain. Yeah, industry may be doing something else. Hey, I think this actually works well with what we need to do, right? And I think, that just was a platform for her to get educated on what can we do out there, right? So Kelly was, again, she had a master's degree, very educated. She understood kind of what's out there, but was in the realm of possible. I think that's really when she went to industry and said, "Oh, wow, we can do all of this too," right? And so I think that's where she said, "Hey, there may be other capability gaps that we could solve with artificial intelligence." And I think that's kind of where it all starts, right? I don't really know within in technology if there's always like, "Hey, we have this fine requirement, hey, go do this." Sometimes it's a natural process where it's like, "Hey, I think this also fits here.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a combination of both.
Yeah. So let's go into some of those combinations. This is fun. All right. So where are some other examples as you look back in your career where you see opportunities where data and AI and data science and math, the mathy folks, we're mathy people. I like that phrase. We'll find a way to use that again. Where does some of that mathy stuff provide real value? As you look back and just go, look, years pass on, and hindsight now looking back on it, were there real examples where those data-driven kind of capabilities were helpful in your work?
All the time. And I'm trying to keep from being too classified here, but first off, I would, mathy people, I would say, but also a mathlete, just to let you know, it's a mathlete.
Oh, excuse me, mathlete. I was pronouncing it wrong. Again, this is good. This is good training. We speak a lot of foreign languages here at Defense Disruptive. We're going to learn this right Okay, that's great. That's great.
All right. So I will tell you different opportunity spaces, definitely within social networking analysis and within the targeting realm, helping to make a decision quickly and accelerating that process. There were a lot of applications that we were able to build overseas that helped to accelerate the decision cycle. And there were several missions that I was privy to, and I was fortunate to be a part of that we got to contribute. But another piece is even with data and data storage, being able to recognize someone with particular types of algorithms, right? Being able to match it. So, someone shows up to a facility or a prison or whatever, and they claim they're someone else. I mean, being able to have the algorithms immediately at your fingertip, and having a database and be able to do like fingerprint matching or facial recognition matching was something that we kind of brought to the battlefield that was really good. Because there were a lot of folks who were claiming they were someone else or someone every time they moved different places and like, oh, no, that's not you.
No, I can see that. I mean, that's very obvious, right? You would want that for any private building, security system or school, let alone in a frontline battlefield environment. So I can absolutely see the value of that. That seems pretty obvious.
It's also like, just like when you're talking about a leader making decisions, and even like having been one of those leaders on the battlefield, like you're doing calculus in your head, right? You're going through like step by step, like, all right, every movement, every decision, there's a decision point and different actions are happening. But to accelerate some of those decisions and have verifications of some of those decisions. So knowing that, hey, that is true or that is the thing. Now I know I can take action versus like, I'm not really sure, but I think I can take action. You have to have another verification source or whatever, but having things do that automatically, fast, quick, with speed, that helps you. And that really gets keeps your troops out of trouble and out of harm's way. But then accomplishes the mission within a speedy manner. So
brilliant. All right. So let's talk about that speed. All right. So AI is changing a bunch. The industry is wild. Everyone knows it. I think a lot of folks in industry and in the US government are still trying to make sense of how to wrangle this stuff and pull it together. What do you see as some of the more recent trends? This is, we're fast forwarding now. We're going past perhaps, 15 years of service into some of the later stuff in your career. But what do you see now as you look at industry from the other side? Right? Because you've separated from the U.S. military, right? You have a few private sector opportunities to see things from the other sides of the table now. What are some of the themes or trends or tools that you're excited about now being on the industrial side?
One of the biggest things that I'm excited about is autonomy.
Okay.
And why am I so excited about autonomy? Because you have so many hands. Like now I'm retired, right? I'm retired. So, and then that was the decision, because obviously I want to have an impact and still have an impact, and especially in the special operations community. But I will tell you, autonomy. One, if you think about what is the realm of possible with autonomy, being able to have like drones, be able to maneuver on their own, like my car, my car can drive itself. These things excite me only because, like, one, I think it can keep the troops safe. Two, it will help to it'll help leaders understand where they are in the battlefield. I used to carry a wristband on my wrist, and I used to track every building and every single bad guy. And I used to have the fire reduction measures, or fire safety measures. So if I'm going to drop a bomb here, what is the distance that someone has to be from that building? And I used to calculate that kind of stuff in my head while I'm on the move, right? There's no need for that, right? We have so much technology; they can do all that for you. Okay, this is the particular guy. Oh, he's here or he's there. Like, and just having those identifications and understanding that while you're moving with speed, would save a lot of time and save a lot of lives, right? So I do think autonomy really excites me. Being able to have human machine teaming. So like not only, is the machine out there finding the things or doing the thing or taking that action, but then, okay, hold up. Just like when you're driving your car and it's driving autonomously, you still have control, right? And still being able to control it. So you're not having, collateral damages, unnecessary collateral damage, right? So I think that's one of the things that does excite me. Cause if I think about back in the day when I was running around with my folks. I don't know if you want to see that picture. I'll show you a photo of that.
Oh, you want to do it? Okay.
Oh yeah. So
well, while you bring that up, I'll just briefly say I strongly agree with you. I'm trying to be a student of history, and I think one of the universal aspects of warfare is that we're trying to pull humans further away from the danger. That when somebody only had swords, somebody invented the bow and arrow, so that you can go further away from the person that could try to hurt you. And I think autonomy provides that capability where you can get further from the humans. The good guys are getting further away from where they could get hurt. We want robots forward, humans further back. That's a great thing. But then the challenge is, well, all the data is at the front, but the decision maker is at the back. And so I think that as much as we have this natural requirement and obligation to make sure that folks are safer by being further from the fight so that they don't get hurt, that also becomes a new challenge then. Well, how do I have responsible decision making when the robot at the front has all the data, but I don't have good comms and I'm on the other side of the work? And that is, I guess, the unfortunate truth of where I see autonomy providing great value, but also new challenges. So that's just my way of saying I agree with you, and where I am curious myself about how that's going to unfold in the future of conflict. But here appears to be looking at a picture of flowers. Chané, what are we looking at here?
No, that was us in the poppy field. We just finished the mission. We did, obviously it was a night mission, and that's daybreak. In that poppy field, I've got several heroes there that I'm really proud to serve with. And those guys, obviously, they pulled me out of a lot of danger, and they taught me a lot as well, right? And I will say, like, in this photo, and the reason why I brought this photo up, and I know we were talking about autonomy, is like back then there was none of that, right? And a lot of the ISR assets that were flying overhead, aircraft moving around, fast movers, all these different things. Fast movers is like a jet. That's what I mean by fast mover. And you got your troops moving on the battlefield. And also I had the Afghan National Army like running around, the commandos running around behind us. Like you have a lot of stimulus coming to one individual or several individuals, right? And you're trying to filter a lot of that out. And at the time, it wasn't much. But now, when I fast forward to when I went out as a data science team leader, and I was doing data science for these guys working on the battlefield, there was a lot more data coming to these gentlemen and ladies that I would have been overwhelmed. I really don't care. I can do one thing well. I can't really do 6 or 7 things well. I always tell people that I can do one thing well, but I can't do 6 or 7, and I can juggle 2, but 3, forget about it, right? So these folks are out there juggling 6 or 7 things, and I think autonomy helps with that. Obviously, in a disconnected environment, there's a challenge. And I think there are to solve that challenge and understand how to operate in this connected environment. Well, that's where the collaborative autonomy piece comes in, with being able to communicate and be able to pass back that information in that disconnected environment. So you can take quick action, right?
Oh, what year was that, by the way? How long ago was that?
Oh, that was 2012. So,
oh wow, 13 years ago. Yeah, wild. Oh my gosh. All right. So the data overwhelming experience is an interesting one, and I see how you're weaving it in with the value that things like autonomy can provide. But for folks that maybe don't have like your expertise, that are not mathlete like you are, I'm trying to say that better this time, how would you help people that are listening in to distinguish between AI and autonomy? And you mentioned data and data science. Like how do you define, like, when are each of those phrases relevant? How would you advise an active duty Army colonel who's maybe in an environment like the picture you're about to show, who's like, I love AI, Autonomy sounds cool. Don't know how to get started. I barely even know where to start plugging this in. What advice would you have for folks that are listening in that want to better learn about autonomy and how it can be helpful to their work in environments like this?
I always, what I used to tell them, I mean, what I tell them now, but when I was in uniform, I would also tell them, you start with the problem. Don't worry about whether AI can solve it or machine learning can solve it, because you can get to the technical jargon between what's the difference between AI and machine learning, what is happening with a convolutional neural network. I could talk through all that jargon, but a lot of times I don't. I usually go to, what is it you're trying to solve? What is it you're looking to do? And then let's see what technology or what best fits that, because it may not be AI, and a lot of times it's not. And most of the times, when I talk to folks, AI is the reason why I don't like to go into like a neural network or any type of network like that, because you have to have really a ton of data, and it's for a niche problem, right? Sometimes that's not what you need. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I just need to be able to make a decision, and just do decision tree analysis, right? Or random forest, in which you're going through a series of branches of decisions, right? And there's probabilities associated within those decisions, and what is more likely to happen versus something else. And if that makes more sense to the problem, then that's what you should use. So don't worry about what math is going to help solve the problem. It's like, worry about what the problem is and identifying what is it you need to help solve that problem. And then the technology will fit that. Is the technology that makes sense to that problem. And sometimes, it's as simple as linear regression. You're just like,
that sounds like statistics to me, Chané. You're making me throw back to some of my own days myself. But before I get lost in my story, what are we looking at now? So what's this picture?
All right, so this is another picture. This is a picture after my buddy Dave Kalin. We had went down to help out. He was in a bit of what we call a firefighter pick, troops in contact. And Dave Kalin had called me down, said, "Hey, Chané, I need you to come on down." And so we went out there as a reaction force, or the supporting element with our commandos. And after we got done with that objective, and we wound up like getting everybody out, and everything was fine, and we detained the folks we needed to detain, and then we had to do. We all just stopped up, posted up, and took a cool guy photo. And
I was going to say, it looks like a cool photo, but for those that can't see it, and maybe those that are even watching in, you may notice that there's one little piece of difference between the 5 gentlemen in uniform, carrying weapons, taking a moment to the side. Only one of them is smiling, and that's Chané. Everyone else looks pretty angry right now. Maybe one guy's a little proud, but then Chané is having the time of his life.
Now, the guy in the center, we called him Perm, Jeremy Copeland. He's actually one of the football coaches at Colorado State University right now. So he's out there. He's a physical trainer, he's one of the coaches up there. And so he's high speed, low drag, but Perm was a pretty strong guy. But he told me, he said, "Sir," he said, "don't smile in the photo." And I smiled anyways.
This is why I wanted my first ever episode to be with you, Chané, that even in difficult times, you find a way to find the joy and purpose in it, even when we're talking about some harsh memories here.
But what I want you to pay attention to, if you look at my wrist, you see there's that armband.
I see it. Yeah, there's like a reddish white kind of like code, like a quarterback of the football team has that, right. That computer on there. That's what it looks like there.
And I have it on both wrists, and that's how I was battle tracking versus having technology with me. I was using my wrist and my form and the Garmin on my left wrist to tell me what was.
Yeah,
that's what technology was back then.
I see this theme, Chané, where, and it may feel a little forced, but I do think that there's a role for good tools and good equipment. We want a rifle that works. We want shielding that is effective. In your earliest days as a cadet, you learned where you were strong, and you also were transparent about where you needed some help. And as we talk about that, like wrist guard, there were some things about that were useful, but some things that should have fundamentally been there. That, like, we want our warfighters to be well equipped when they go forward if they have to be put in harm's way. And there's some things that it can do, like maybe wrangle some data, maybe a little linear regression when needed, but there's a lot of things it can't do. AI for AI purpose is useless. No one cares. It's not going to solve the requirement. It's usually a bad place to start. So I think I see this like trying to stay strong where you're strong and bring in the tools when needed is what it sounds like is a common theme throughout a lot of your careers in service. And thank you so much for sharing these photos. I hope that a lot of the folks named in this recording end up watching this and then telling us their version of your stories. It'd be kind of fun if we end up sharing this around.
Yeah,
Hey, Chané is great, but he missed a few parts. We got this.
You can talk to Jeremy all you want to, and all these guys, and Kevin Robbins. Kevin Robbins is he was my Charlie. He's still in the Army. He's Sergeant Major of United States Special Forces Kennedy School. In the D3, and he talk all kinds of smack. He's like,
well, we'll have to invite him on the next podcast, perhaps. We'll have a chance to do this. So as we round up here from the home stretch, let's talk a little bit to the future. So, let's talk about where you see, and with your areas of expertise in terms of AI and data science, and recognizing there's a lot we can't share about special operations, but where do you see this going? Where do you see your work that is, you mentioned you're retired, right? You separated out the folks that are still serving, that are still trying to wrangle this information, that are dealing with the next wave and the next ridgeline of threats and challenges. What do you see them using and asking for? Like, where's the next step here for AI in the battlefield?
Well, I will tell you this. I do think our special operators will play a different role on the battlefield. I do think they will evolve into one being completely disconnected or in a D-Bill environment and operate solely in that by, with, and through partner forces. And I think that what's going to happen in the future is we're really going to have to lean heavy on technology to scale and to have the force of, because we're not going to be able to send conventional forces everywhere. We're not going to be able to send brigades and divisions places, because I think those types of wars are coming to an end. I do think that we are getting to the point where we're shifting into, hey, like, we're going to send a small team and they got to execute. And it may be in a denied area, or maybe somewhere where, it's hostile territory, but they may have to go and do what they need to do mission wise. And they're not going to be able to do that and expose themselves. So they're going to have to do that with the technology they have available to them. Same time as I do think that we will be seeing technology against technology, which is something that we have to anticipate, right? Because we're not the only ones that can envision this stuff, right? So, that's another thing. Our operators are going to have to understand how to use and do these things, because we operators are expensive, and not just in terms of cost, but experience. It takes a long time to grow an operator to what they eventually become after 15, 20 years. And so, that experience, that vast knowledge that they have, you got to preserve that. I mean, you got to protect that too. So, and not to say those guys they always put themselves at risk. They're the bravest men I've ever met. But you want to take care of them, right? Especially if they're going up against technology. So, I do see the battlefield changing and the way that we fight changing. Obviously, with PMISI, which is political, military, social, economic, infrastructure, all that stuff kind of coming together. How do we influence the battlefield in a different way with cybersecurity, space, all these different levels of the battlefield matter. And we have to understand how to operate in that and how to maneuver in that space.
All right, Chané. So final question. I believe you're a family man, as I am. If you were to give advice to a member of your family that's themselves just about to either become a cadet or graduate from an academy or a preparatory school and enter the U.S. military, what advice would you have for that family member?
So I'm glad you said that, because my daughter the other day shocked me, and she's like, "Daddy, I want to be a Green Beret." And I was like, "What?"
Congratulations. I mean, I'm so sorry. I mean, congratulations. Yeah.
I said, "What? What?" I was confused because she never mentioned it before, but she told her grandmother that. So I was just like, "Oh, okay. Well, we got to prepare." So one of the things I did tell her, and I always tell her, is understand what it means to serve. And that's what I told her. I said, I don't care what anybody tells you, be a Green Beret, be a Ranger, be an intel officer, be a sailor, understand what it means to serve. Like, what does it mean to be a servant leader? Because a servant leader puts others before themselves. And that's a very difficult concept for a lot of people to really understand. And I try to tell her, like, you have to grasp that, because I don't care if you're the cook, right? You are putting the soldiers in front of you before you, because you know that they got to get taken care of because they had a mission to do or something more important. But it's not even just serving, it's also your community, right? How do you help and serve your community? So my daughter kind of, we sat down and watched Band of Brothers, the whole series, so she could kind of see what that servant leadership is about. And we watch different shows now to kind of understand it. Because I said, not only do you have to get the physical, mental, all that stuff prepared, that's the easy part. Understanding how to serve is the hard part. And she just looked at me like kind of confused, like, so I got to be a waiter? I was like, no. So we're working on it.
I think we're all a work in progress there, Chané. I'm working on that myself a little bit. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on this first ever episode. Again, Chané Jackson, a principal of TurbineOne. I'm honored to be working with this extraordinary public servant. And again, in closing here, my name's Ian Kalin, closing off our first ever episode of Defense Disrupted, and I hope you all can dial in for the next episode. Bye-bye.